Adriana, there's something I need to tell you.
Adriana's heart skipped a beat.
What is it?
It's about my ancestor.
Adriana frowned, confused.
What do you mean?
It turns out that my great-grandmother was actually from the same village as your mother's family. I didn't think much of it at first, but then I started looking into it more closely, and I found out that, well, our families are distantly related.
Adriana felt a chill run down her spine.
Related? How?
Adriana didn't know what to say. After everything she'd been through with Alejandro, the idea of another family connection was unsettling. Adriana was a 25-year-old with a heart that had been bruised and battered by love. Tall, graceful, with deep brown eyes that held a sparkle of hope despite the pain she'd endured. She was known for her contagious smile and her kind heart. Adriana had tried to find love the old-fashioned way, but every relationship seemed to end in heartbreak. Whether it was due to differences in goals, interests, or simply bad timing, her love life had been a string of disappointments. After her last breakup, Adriana decided to take a break from dating. She focused on her job as an admin at a local grocery store in the heart of Mexico City. The job was far from glamorous, but she enjoyed the routine, the familiar faces of customers, and the comfort of knowing she was helping keep things running smoothly. However, as the weeks turned into months, Adriana's loneliness began to gnaw at her. One evening, after a particularly long day at work, she found herself scrolling through a dating app that her friend Maria had been insisting she try. With a sigh, Adriana created a profile, uploaded a few photos, and filled out a brief bio, her finger hovering over the submit button before finally pressing it. What's the worst that could happen, she thought. To Adriana's surprise, the app turned out to be more engaging than she'd expected. Messages started pouring in, but most were from guys who either seemed too forward or too uninterested. Just when she was about to give up, she received a message from a guy named Alejandro. Alejandro's profile was intriguing. He was 28, with a job in architecture, and his photos showed him hiking, laughing with friends, and even playing the guitar. His message was simple but sincere. Hi, Adriana. I read your profile, and I think we might have a lot in common. Care to chat? They started talking, and before long, their conversations became the highlight of Adriana's day. Alejandro was everything she wanted in a man. Funny, thoughtful, and with a voice that made her heart skip a beat every time they talked on the phone. Adriana found herself falling for him, even though they had never met in person. For 3 months, they talked every day. The more they communicated, the more Adriana felt a deep connection with Alejandro. He seemed to understand her in a way no one else ever had. Finally, they decided it was time to meet face to face. Alejandro suggested a fancy restaurant in the city, and they set a date for Friday at 7 p.m. The day of their date, Adriana was a bundle of nerves. She couldn't concentrate at work and kept glancing at the clock, counting down the hours until she could leave. Finally, at 5 p.m., her shift ended, and she rushed home to get ready. She called her best friend Maria over to help her pick out an outfit. Maria arrived with a bottle of wine and a big grin on her face.
This is it, chica.
Maria exclaimed, hugging Adriana tightly.
I have a good feeling about this one.
Maria said. They spent the next hour going through Adriana's closet, trying on dresses, skirts, and blouses. They finally settled on a deep red dress that hugged Adriana's curves in all the right places. It was elegant, yet simple, perfect for a first date. Maria insisted on doing Adriana's makeup, adding just the right amount of eyeliner to make her eyes pop and a touch of red lipstick to match the dress. By the time Adriana was ready, it was 6:45 p.m.
You look stunning.
Maria said, admiring her work.
He's going to fall head over heels for you.
Adriana smiled nervously.
I hope so.
She replied.
But I'm just hoping we have the same connection in person that we do online.
Maria hugged her again before leaving.
Good luck, amiga. Text me when you get home.
Adriana took one last look in the mirror before grabbing her purse and heading out the door. The restaurant was only a short drive away, but her heart pounded in her chest the entire time while she was in the back seat of the Uber. When she arrived at the restaurant, she took a deep breath and walked inside. The place was even more beautiful than she had imagined, with dim lighting, soft music, and elegant decor. A waiter led her to a table in the corner where Alejandro was already seated. As soon as Adriana saw Alejandro, her breath caught in her throat. He was even more handsome in person than in his photos. Tall with dark hair and a chiseled jawline, he stood up to greet her with a warm smile.
Adriana,
He said, his voice like velvet.
you look absolutely stunning.
Adriana blushed as she took the seat he offered her.
Thank you, Alejandro. You look great too.
The conversation flowed effortlessly, just as it had over the phone. They talked about their jobs, their favorite movies, and their childhood memories. Alejandro was charming, attentive, and made Adriana laugh until her sides hurt. For the first time in a long while, she felt truly happy. As the night wore on, Alejandro reached across the table and took Adriana's hand in his.
I've had a wonderful time tonight, Adriana. I'm really glad we finally did this.
He said, his voice sincere. Adriana's heart melted at his words.
Me too, Alejandro. This has been one of the best nights I've had in a long time.
She replied. After dinner, Alejandro offered to drive Adriana home. She hesitated for a moment, but then nodded.
Sure, that would be nice.
She said, feeling a little flutter of excitement in her stomach. The drive to Adriana's apartment was quiet, but comfortable. They arrived at her building, and Alejandro walked her to the door.
Would you like to come in for a coffee?
Adriana asked, hoping he would say yes.
I'd love to.
Alejandro smiled. Inside, Adriana set about making the coffee, while Alejandro took off his jacket and placed it on the couch. As he turned to face her, Adriana noticed something that made her freeze. There, on the back of his neck, was a small, crescent-shaped birthmark. Adriana's heart skipped a beat as a wave of familiarity washed over her. She almost spat out the coffee she was sipping.
Alejandro,
She said, trying to keep her voice steady.
that birthmark on your neck, where did you get it?
Alejandro looked surprised by the question, but answered calmly.
I've had it since birth. My mom has the same one. She always told me it was our family's good luck charm.
Adriana's mind was racing. Her mother's sister, her beloved aunt, also had a crescent-shaped birthmark on her neck. Could it be a coincidence? Adriana tried to shake the thought from her mind, but the more she thought about it, the more the pieces started to fit together. She took a deep breath and asked another question.
Alejandro, what's your mother's name?
Alejandro hesitated, sensing something was wrong.
Her name is Clara.
He said softly.
Why?
Adriana felt like the ground had been pulled out from under her. Clara was her aunt's name, her mother's sister. She stared at Alejandro, her mind reeling. Could it be true? Had she almost started dating her cousin? The room suddenly felt too small, the air too thick. Adriana's hands trembled as she tried to process the revelation.
Alejandro,
She whispered, her voice shaky.
I think we might be related.
Alejandro's eyes widened in shock.
What? How? That can't be possible.
Adriana quickly explained her family history, telling him about her mother's sister Clara and how they had lost touch over the years. The more she talked, the more Alejandro's expression changed from disbelief to understanding.
This can't be happening.
Alejandro muttered, running a hand through his hair.
Adriana, are you sure?
I'm afraid so.
She replied, her voice barely above a whisper. Tears welled up in her eyes as the weight of the situation settled in. She had finally met someone who seemed perfect, someone who made her heart sing, only to find out that they were family. Alejandro looked as devastated as Adriana felt. He sat down heavily on the couch, his head in his hands,
I don't believe this.
his voice thick with emotion.
I thought we had something special.
We did,
Adriana said, sitting down beside him.
but we can't ignore the truth. We can't be together.
The silence that followed was filled with unspoken pain. They had shared so much, and now it all seemed like a cruel joke. Adriana's heart ached knowing that she had to let go of the one person who had made her believe in love again. After what felt like an eternity, Alejandro stood up, his face a mask of sadness.
I should go. I need to process this.
Adriana nodded, unable to find the words to say goodbye. Alejandro picked up his jacket, his eyes lingering on her for a moment before he turned and walked out the door. As soon as the door closed behind him, Adriana felt the tears spill over. She buried her face in her hands, her shoulders shaking with sobs. How had things gone so wrong? Just hours ago, she had been so full of hope, so sure that Alejandro was the one. Now, all she felt was an overwhelming sense of loss. Adriana sat on the couch for what felt like hours, replaying the night over and over in her mind. It was so unfair. She had been through so much already, and just when she thought she had finally found happiness, it was snatched away from her. The pain of almost losing a lover and then discovering he was family was a bitter pill to swallow. Eventually, she forced herself to get up and wash the coffee cups. The simple task helped to ground her, to distract her from the storm of emotions swirling inside her. But even as she cleaned, the reality of what had happened kept creeping back in. She had almost dated her cousin. The very thought made her stomach turn. She picked up her phone to call Maria, but then hesitated. How could she even begin to explain what had happened? She didn't want to see the look of pity in Maria's eyes or hear the well-meaning but empty words of comfort. Not yet, anyway. Instead, she turned off the lights and went to bed, hoping that sleep would bring some relief from the heartache. The next few days were a blur. Adriana went to work, did her job, and went home. But everything felt hollow. She couldn't stop thinking about Alejandro, about what might have been. The pain of losing him was made worse by the knowledge that there was nothing either of them could have done differently. It was fate, cruel and unforgiving, that had brought them together and torn them apart. Maria noticed the change in Adriana almost immediately.
You're not yourself.
She said one afternoon as they had lunch together.
What happened on your date with Alejandro? You never called me.
Adriana stared at her salad, her appetite gone. She knew she couldn't keep it from Maria forever, so she took a deep breath and told her everything. Maria listened in stunned silence, her eyes wide with disbelief.
Wait, so you're telling me that Alejandro is your cousin?
Maria finally said, her voice incredulous. Adriana nodded, her throat tight.
I know, it sounds crazy, but it's true. He's my mom's sister's son. I had no idea until I saw that birthmark on his neck.
Maria shook her head, still trying to process it.
Wow, Adriana. I don't even know what to say. That's just awful.
I know.
Adriana said, her voice breaking.
I really liked him, Maria. I thought he might be the one, and now I don't know what to do.
Maria reached across the table and squeezed Adriana's hand.
I'm so sorry, amiga. I can't even imagine how hard this must be for you. But you're strong, Adriana. You'll get through this.
Adriana wanted to believe her, but the pain in her chest made it hard to see a way forward.
I don't know, Maria.
She said softly.
It just feels like I'm never going to find the right person. Every time I get close, something goes wrong.
You will?
Maria insisted.
It might take time, but you will. You just have to keep believing that your soulmate is out there somewhere.
Adriana tried to take comfort in Maria's words, but it was difficult. She felt like the universe was playing some kind of cruel joke on her. How could she keep believing in love when it had brought her nothing but heartache? Days turned into weeks, and slowly, Adriana began to heal. She still thought about Alejandro, but the pain was no longer as sharp as it had been. She threw herself into her work, spending extra hours at the grocery store and volunteering at a local charity on weekend, a way to distract herself from her own problems. One afternoon, while she was organizing a food drive at the charity, Adriana received a message on her phone. It was from Alejandro. Her heart skipped a beat as she hesitated before opening it.
Hi, Adriana. I've been thinking a lot about what happened, and I just wanted to say that I'm really sorry for everything. I know it's been hard, but I want you to know that I'm here if you ever need to talk. Take care.
Adriana stared at the message for a long time. She had thought about reaching out to Alejandro many times, but she had always stopped herself, afraid of reopening old wounds. But now, seeing his words, she felt a sense of closure. She didn't need to respond. Alejandro was part of her past, and it was time for her to move on. The next few months brought new changes to Adriana's life. The grocery store where she worked underwent a management change. and she was promoted to a supervisor position. It was a step up, with more responsibilities and a higher salary. The job kept her busy, and she found herself enjoying the new challenges. But while work was fulfilling, Adriana couldn't help but feel that something was still missing. She missed the companionship, the connection she had felt with Alejandro. She knew she wasn't ready to start dating again, but the idea of finding someone who could make her feel that way again was something she couldn't shake. One evening, as she was closing up the store, Adriana noticed a familiar face among the customers. It was a man who had been coming to the store regularly for the past few weeks. He was tall, with sandy blonde hair and a friendly smile. He always made small talk with her at the checkout, and she found herself looking forward to his visits. Tonight, he approached the counter with a shy smile.
Hi, Adriana.
He said, glancing at her name tag.
I'm Daniel. I've been meaning to introduce myself, but I guess I've been a little nervous.
Adriana smiled back, feeling a flutter of excitement.
Nice to meet you, Daniel. Is there something I can help you with?
Daniel chuckled, rubbing the back of his neck.
Actually, I was wondering if you'd like to grab a coffee sometime. I know this great little cafe not far from here.
Adriana's heart skipped a beat. It had been a long time since someone had asked her out, and she wasn't sure if she was ready. But there was something about Daniel that put her at ease, something that made her want to take a chance.
Sure.
She said, surprising herself.
I'd like that.
Daniel's face lit up with a smile.
Great. How about tomorrow after your shift?
Adriana nodded, feeling a sense of anticipation she hadn't felt in months.
Tomorrow sounds perfect.
The next day, Adriana found herself looking forward to her coffee date with Daniel. She hadn't felt this kind of excitement in a long time, and it was a welcome change. When her shift ended, she quickly changed into a more casual outfit and met Daniel outside the store. The cafe he had mentioned was a cozy little place with a warm atmosphere and delicious pastries. They sat by the window, sipping their drinks and getting to know each other. Daniel was easy to talk to, and Adriana found herself laughing and smiling more than she had in months. As they talked, she learned that Daniel was a photographer who had moved to Mexico City a year ago for work. He had a passion for capturing the beauty of everyday life, and his eyes lit up when he talked about his projects. Adriana found his enthusiasm contagious, and she loved hearing about the places he had traveled to and the people he had met.
So, what about you?
Daniel asked, leaning back in his chair.
What do you do when you're not working at the grocery store?
Adriana smiled, feeling a little shy.
Well, I've been volunteering at a local charity lately. It's something I started doing after a tough time in my life. It helps me feel like I'm making a difference, even if it's just in a small way.
Daniel's expression softened.
That's really admirable, Adriana. It's not easy to give back when you're going through your own struggles. But it sounds like you've got a big heart.
Adriana blushed, not used to receiving such genuine compliments.
Thanks, Daniel. It's been a journey, but I'm getting there.
As the evening wore on, Adriana felt a connection with Daniel that was different from what she'd experienced with Alejandro. It wasn't as intense or overwhelming, but it was comforting and real. She found herself opening up to him about her past, about the heartbreak she had endured, and the strange twist of fate that had brought her and Alejandro together. Daniel listened intently, his expression thoughtful.
That's a lot to go through, Adriana. But I think it's made you stronger. You've been through so much, but here you are, still standing, still moving forward.
Adriana smiled, feeling a warmth in her chest.
I guess you're right. It's taken me a while to get to this point, but I'm starting to believe that maybe there's still hope for me.
There definitely is.
Daniel said, his eyes locking with hers.
And who knows? Maybe this is the start of something new.
Adriana's heart fluttered at his words, but she also felt a sense of caution. She had learned the hard way that life was unpredictable, and she didn't want to get her hopes up too soon. But as she looked into Daniel's kind eyes, she felt a spark of something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope.
Maybe it is.
Adriana replied, her voice soft but filled with a quiet confidence.
I'd like to see where this goes.
They continued their conversation late into the evening. As they left the cafe and walked back toward her apartment, Daniel turned to her, his face serious.
Adriana, I know we've only just started getting to know each other, but I want you to know that I'm not looking to rush into anything. I've been through my own share of ups and downs, and I know how important it is to take things slow. But I really like you, and I'd like to see where this could lead.
Adriana felt a surge of emotion at his words. It was exactly what she needed to hear.
I feel the same way, Daniel. I've been hurt before, and I'm still healing. But I want to give this a chance. Let's take it one step at a time.
Daniel smiled, reaching out to gently take her hand.
One step at a time sounds perfect.
They stood outside her apartment for a moment, neither of them wanting the evening to end. But Adriana knew that this was just the beginning, and she didn't want to rush anything. She squeezed Daniel's hand before letting go.
I'll see you soon.
Daniel nodded, his smile warm and reassuring.
Definitely. Good night, Adriana.
Good night, Daniel.
As she watched him walk away, Adriana felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in a long time. She had faced so much heartbreak, but here she was, standing on the threshold of something new. It wasn't the fairy tale romance she had once dreamed of, but it was real, and that was what mattered. Over the next few weeks, Adriana and Daniel continued to see each other. They took things slow, spending time together without the pressure of defining their relationship. They went on casual dates, strolls through the park, visits to art galleries, and quiet dinners at cozy restaurants. Each time, Adriana felt herself growing more comfortable with Daniel, and her feelings for him deepened. Daniel was patient and understanding, never pushing her to move faster than she was ready for. He respected her boundaries and made her feel valued and cared for. For the first time in a long while, Adriana felt like she could breathe easily, without the weight of past heartbreaks hanging over her. As the weeks turned into months, Adriana realized that she was falling more and more in love with Daniel. He wasn't just someone who made her feel good. He was someone she could see a future with, and for the first time, the idea of a future with someone didn't scare her. One evening, as they were having dinner at Adriana's apartment, Daniel looked at her with a serious expression.
Adriana, there's something I need to tell you.
Adriana's heart skipped a beat.
What is it?
Daniel hesitated, as if unsure how to begin.
I've been doing some research into my family history, and I found something interesting. It's about my ancestors.
Adriana frowned, confused.
What do you mean?
Well,
Daniel began.
it turns out that my great-grandmother was actually from the same village as your mother's family. I didn't think much of it at first, but then I started looking into it more closely, and I found out that, well, our families are distantly related.
Adriana felt a chill run down her spine.
Related? How?
It's not as close as what happened with you and Alejandro.
Daniel quickly added, sensing her alarm.
We're talking several generations back. A distant connection, but it's there.
Adriana didn't know what to say. After everything she'd been through with Alejandro, the idea of another family connection was unsettling. But as Daniel looked at Adriana, he knew he had to end his joke, as Adriana wasn't having any of it. Gotcha! He laughed hysterically. Adriana heaved a sigh of relief as Daniel continued laughing. One day, on a quiet evening, much like the ones they had spent together in the past, Daniel got down on one knee and asked Adriana to marry him. With tears in her eyes and a heart full of love, she said yes. Their wedding was a beautiful celebration of their love, surrounded by family and friends who had supported them on their journey. As they exchanged vows, Adriana felt a deep sense of gratitude for everything that had led her to this moment. The heartbreaks, the twists of fate, the unexpected connections. All of it had brought her to Daniel, the man she was meant to spend her life with. If you enjoyed this story, please support us by liking this video and subscribing to our channel. Thank you for watching, and see you in our next story.